10 a.m. time certain. So we were going to reconvene this meeting and go into a public hearing. This is the first public hearing. Discussion concerning an amendment to Tillamook County Ordinance number 86. Short-term rental operator license fee to support housing and public safety initiatives. And with us this morning, we've got Sarah Absher, Director of Community Development. Good morning again, Sarah.
Good morning again, Commissioner. Thank you. Before you today is the first reading of proposed amendments to Tillamook County Ordinance 86, which is the county ordinance that regulates the requirement and collection of a short-term rental operator license fee that is intended to be paid by the owners of a short-term rental. This program was initially adopted at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, and it was one of the outcomes of the 2019 Housing Summit that was held at the college, hosted by the Tillamook County Housing Commission and the department, as one of the top strategies to help address how we could better support housing initiatives in Tillamook County in response to our housing crisis. The program was developed with an operator license fee, the fee amount based upon revenue of a short-term rental. This was something we had extensive conversations about, and largely that formulation was developed because the rental industry felt it was important to make sure that there was an equitable fee structure for rental owners. You had some rentals who perhaps are very small, they, 2 bedrooms, small cottage, somewhere, and then the other side of the spectrum are larger homes that are being rented for much more a night and can house and accommodate several more people. The program was implemented and started July 1st of 2021. This last fall, as you are aware, ORLA, the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association, reached out to community development to express their concerns about the collection method of the program. Not the operator license fee itself, but just how the fee was determined. And so Commissioner Scar and I met with ORLA in November, mid-November, and proposed an alternative strategy to determine the fee the basis of the fee amount. And so we have been working on that since that conversation with ORLA. And the outcome of that conversation and the work that we've done is reflected in the changes to the order that's before you for consideration and discussion today. And so what the amended proposal is to remove the fee structure based on revenue, remove the quarterly payment requirement, and create a flat fee based now on maximum occupancy of the rental that would then also be paid on an annual basis. So instead of a quarterly payment based on revenue, we are proposing a fee payment paid annually once a year, either at the time the permit is approved or during the renewal time of an existing permit, and then essentially the formula be $75 per person, and that is the maximum occupancy of a rental. So in the notice, which you did receive a copy of that we sent out to all of our owners and operators, there was a table and an example. So with the proposal at $75 per person, if the maximum occupancy of the rental is 8 persons, then the annual fee for that would be $600. And what we found in our exploration of that fee assessment of $75 per person was that seemed to be the equivalent to the structure for fee that is currently in place. So most of our rental owners will not pay any more or any less. Some of them actually with the structure may pay less if we're basing it on the number of persons and not the revenue. But ultimately, it balances out to what we currently have in place with anticipated revenue projections. In my conversations with vacation rental managers of our management companies, I have been visiting with them about this since that conversation Commissioner Starr and I had in November with Orla. Many of them like this approach and this process of an annual payment with a flat rate much better. So I appreciate their feedback and their support in that. Also, we recently received an email from Jason Brandt from Orla that I will be sharing with you and submitting for the public record, who is thanking the county for our efforts to make these changes, and they have no concerns and support these changes moving forward.
Good to hear.
Hmm.
Okay. Anything else?
Happy to answer this.
Bill Sargent.
And I think, from a legal perspective, we're in a little, well, certainly a better position in terms of a fee versus a tax kind of argument. When we originally enacted this, I worked on it with Joel a little bit, and we felt comfortable with the proportionate way that it was done before, but we certainly recognized that if it was taken to a judge, we might have, it would certainly be something that would be argued that it was a tax and it should have gone out and, to the people and for a vote. So I think this gives you, it's a better legal structure to do it this way than the way the ordinance is currently set up, I think.
Thank you, Bill. Comments? Questions of Sarah? Is this appropriate to ask you questions now?
Absolutely.
We're gonna have other opportunities, correct? Perfect, okay.
I wanted to mention that I read the packet that we have today and the public comments that came in and an additional email that we got this morning. And the concerns seem to be for people who are not renting very often. And so, or if they're, one of the comments was from someone who said, well, my capacity is 8, but I always limit it at 5. And other folks who said, I just rent every so often. And so they preferred the way that it's set up now. So I just wondered if you can speak to that. Are there options for people to address that? Could somebody who is currently licensed for 8, could they reduce their license to 5 and thereby pay less? Or what are the options for people who fall out of the norm of, I think we set this up thinking people regularly rent, but what about people who don't?
Thank you, Commissioner. That's an excellent question. So we, too, staff, have been engaged in conversations with owners upon receipt of our notice that have raised the question of, well, my occupancy is approved for 8 or 10 people, but maybe they only rent to 4 or 6. So we are happy to adjust the maximum occupancy on the permit and then adjust that fee rate accordingly. But the occupancy would have to be lowered on the permit in order to adjust that payment. So if they're actually only renting, to 4 or 6 people, that smaller number, then yeah, we're happy to adjust the occupancy. It would just commit them then to that maximum occupancy moving forward. So we can certainly do that. I think one of the emails that you all received, I did just receive a copy of it last night as well, was in relation to renters who rent less than 2 weeks a year. What I'd like to do is be prepared to better speak to that at the next hearing. I'd like to talk to my staff and county council about that. There may be a way for those folks that are renting for less than 2 weeks a year where we could accommodate waiving that operator fee or reducing it. My concern would be how we track that and make sure that that is exactly what's happening. So if it's okay with you, I would like a little bit more time to look into that.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, and I would comment on that. We had quite a bit of conversation around, could it be based on the number of nights that people rent per year? Because we had a lot of conversation around the equitable piece of this, which in the comments that I received, or we all received, there's, certainly a fair amount of concern about the equity. What if I'm a small renter? What if I rent, just less than two weeks per year? Or maybe I only rent 1 week every month. Why do I have to pay the same amount? But we don't currently have a system that tracks the number of nights per year that people rent their unit. That isn't part of it. What we get are the transient lodging tax payments. And people say, well, why are we changing this at all? And I think it's a good time for just a quick reminder that the transient lodging tax is a tax. We are allowed to levy that because the state said counties have that option if they take it to their voters. We took it to our voters. Our voters said yes. But that tax specifically has to be split. 30% off the top goes to our roads, which is a fabulous thing, and I believe that has a lot of weight as to why voters passed it originally. And the remainder of the money that we have has to go to tourism promotion and tourism facilities. Those are fabulous things, but those do not include public safety by law. They do not include housing. So the fee that we are working with today is something where we would like to be able to utilize those funds for needs that are in fact impacted by visitors to the community. Public safety is significantly impacted by visitors to the community. The short-term rental program does impact our housing program, and our housing crisis has impacts from short-term rentals. So in order for us to have the funds that we need to address these other issues, we have to make sure that this is not seen as a tax, because as soon as it's seen as a tax, that immediately kicks that 70-30 split right back into everything. 30% to the roads, the remainder to only promotions and facilities for tourism. So I think it's a really important piece that for those who say, I prefer this revenue base, why don't you just do it like a tax? Because then it is a tax, and then it is not able to be used for the community concerns that we need it for. So I feel like that's important to address. What is transient lodging tax and how is it different than what we're talking about with a short-term operator license? So Sarah, you can correct me if any of what I just said was incorrect, but it felt very important to me that people understand these are two different pieces seeking revenue for two very different purposes, all of which are a part of what comes from having short-term rentals in our community. So I hope that answers some of the questions that were in some of the emails that we got. For instance, Kathleen Johnson had said, it's fine for fire and rescue, but I would think that TLT taxes already pay for that. And just to clarify, they do not, and they cannot. It's simply not allowed. Someone pointed out that by changing the structure, we're missing out on potential revenue because we won't raise as much with this structure. But again, recognizing that as soon as we put it onto the amount of revenue earned as a percentage, Orla believes that it becomes a tax. And we really just don't want to get everything kicked back into that piece. So I hope that answers questions, and Commissioner Bell, I appreciate the question about the cap as well on occupancy, and as Sarah's clarified, people can set that cap where they would like to, they can't go larger than what their home is allowed by building code, but they certainly can go smaller. So, and I guess one other thing I wanted to mention is that Orla put a white paper, a position statement out, and I just got a copy of it yesterday, about reining in illegal hotels. And in this position paper, Orla very clearly talks about the concerns that they have with the proliferation of short-term rentals in communities. So for those of you who are not familiar with Orla, that is the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association, and we've talked about them today already, and they are, I'm going to say they were the moving force behind allowing the transient lodging tax to come to counties, which is a fabulous thing, but they are also in many ways the keepers of that tax and what is allowable with it and not allowable with it. We repeatedly hear in our community, why don't we just change how we use our tax? Well, we can't. And Orla has very strong lobbyists at the state level, which has ensured that that continues to be true. This position paper is of concern to me, because it feels like the first shot over the bow to say, we may come after short-term rentals, and we may try to stop that because they are illegal hotels. So it brings great concern to me that they are now targeting that. What gives me hope is that they lay out a set of things that they believe that local governments should be doing to assure that these illegal hotels are properly managed and properly regulated. And I'm happy to say that we do those things in Tillamook County, and I think probably largely along the coast. But they are very specific as to the problems with unregulated and illegal hotels. So I think part of our actions as a county in regulating our hotels, and ensuring, or our short-term rentals that are non-hotels, is ensuring that we are supporting their continued use by supporting appropriate and regulated use, of which this short-term rental operator license is a piece of that. Because Orla digs in and takes some hits at how short-term rentals affect the livability of communities. And our goal in bringing forward revenues for public safety and housing is to reduce some of the impacts that those short-term rentals can have in our communities. It's a complex issue. So thank you for the time to come.
Absolutely. And I'm in total agreement with both other commissioners. This fee is really being put into place because of what issues are caused by the vast number of short-term rentals we have in this county. Public safety is absolutely one of them. Again, our population in Tillamook County is roughly 26,000 people. Not unusual for us in Tillamook County during the summer months to have 4 or 5 times that many people in Tillamook County. That puts terrific strain on our fire and rescue, on our ambulance services, on our police departments, on our sheriff's office. In other words, we have to design our infrastructure, especially for public safety, around the maximum number of people that we have here during the summer months. And that's a very costly thing for us to have to do. At the same time, we talked about this over the years on how the vast number of second homes and vacation rentals pushes up the cost of housing in Tillamook County. We have a very difficult time hiring people in Tillamook County. Well, we don't have a hard time hiring them. We have a hard time keeping them. They will want to come to the coast to live. They love being here at the coast. They are interested in accepting the job when we offer, but then they come here and try to find a place to live, and they cannot. So there are so many issues here. This fee, this nominal fee, I feel is going to help us in those areas, not only in public safety, but in helping with our housing coordinator, our housing commission, in trying to find ways to resolve the housing issues that we have here in Tillamook County. So I'm looking to this concept as a good thing for Tillamook County overall, especially for the local residents. I do. So I think those are the comments that I have currently. Any other questions or comments anyone would like to make? Okay. So at this point, should we open public comments? Okay. So being 10:20 a.m., we're going to open the public comment portion of the public hearing. And do we have a list of people that want to comment? So we have no one in the room, so I guess we're going to go to the virtual option. There is a hand raise option, correct? We have a hand raise option. So if you would like to provide public comment to the Board of Commissioners on this issue, please raise your hand online, and we will allow you public comment. Okay, first one that came up is Leslie K. Leslie, can you turn on your camera and unmute yourself, and can you please give us your full name and area of residence, please?
Yes, Commissioners, thank you. I'm Leslie Kay from Oceanside, Oregon, and I had submitted written testimony, but apparently it wasn't included in the packet. I'm sure that must have been an oversight, and I I'm in touch with Lynn Tone about getting that testimony included. But I'm one of the short-term rental permit holders that rents for less than 14 days per year, and that's consistent with a federal tax status, where if one doesn't rent for 14 days or more, it's not considered a business. And this is largely to family and friends, and so I'm one of those people who opposes this flat fee structure because it disproportionately burdens people like myself who rent on a very limited basis. And I've heard all the comments today, and I appreciate that you seem to all appreciate that there's this subset of, probably a small subset of people that are going to be adversely affected by this structure. And I guess I would urge you to consider either exempting people who rent less than 14 days per year, like the federal tax structure does, or impose a nominal fee proportional to what large operators who receive, many times more revenue than someone like myself who hasn't rented at all during the COVID pandemic. And I think the last time I did, I maybe had $1,900 worth of revenue for the year. So under this proposal, because I am certified for 8 people, I would be paying $600 a year as an operator fee with $1,700 worth of revenue. So I don't know how many people there are like me, but it has a very adverse sort of impact on my situation. And I think there's a way of remedying this by either exempting people who rent less than 14 days per year, as the federal government does, in the tax code, which I cited in my written testimony, but apparently it wasn't included, as I said, in the packet. And I also sent you individual emails this morning, but I didn't include my testimony because I thought it was in the packet. And I will try and get that included in the packet so you have the citation to the federal law if you need it, about people who rent less than 14 days who aren't considered businesses. We do not deduct taxes or fees from our tax returns or anything like this for the rentals because they're not considered businesses. I could go on, but I don't want to take too much time. I just want you to be aware that there's a subset of people who are adversely affected, and I think you can remedy it by exempting or imposing a nominal fee. We do want to support efforts in Tillamook County and be part of our community and part of this program. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Cage, appreciate that very much. I am in receipt of your email this morning at 7:44 a.m., so I do appreciate that. And it was mentioned by Director Absher in her opening remarks that she is aware of this now, and she would like to spend the time between now and our second hearing to do some research on this issue. So, and I think that's a great thing.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
True. Any other? Yes, Sarah, I think we can do that, correct? Yes, please.
Mr. Ken Jones did reach out to Ms. Tone right before the hearing started, and he would also like to speak, if he's on the line.
So, Ken Jones? So, Mr. Jones, are you online? Don't see him. Okay, so anyone else that would like to make public comment here, please raise your hand. Online. And up at the top of the screen, you'll see some icons. One of them is a little face with a hand, and I think if you press that button, that will raise your hand and notify us that you would like to speak.
Chair Yamamoto, we have several people on the phone, so they would have to unmute themselves.
Okay. So, if you are on the phone and would like to speak, at this point, let's open this up to public comment by those of you on the phone. Please unmute yourself. You can press *6 or hit the unmute button.
Mr. Jones is listening, we are in receipt of his testimony, it's in our packet.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, if we have no other public comments, again, so we will be accepting written public comments for the duration. Our next public hearing on this is going to be, I just saw that, somewhere,
Thank you, Chair Yamamoto.
Yes.
It's March 23rd at 10 a.m.
March 23rd, again Wednesday at 10 a.m. for the second public hearing. We're going to keep public comment open, is that correct? Oops,
There's Ken Jones.
great. And Mr. Jones? So you are muted, sir. No, you're still muted. Huh. So, Mr. Jones, we've had this occur occasionally before. It might help if you log out and then log back into our meeting, and you may have audio capabilities. If you would like to try that, we will wait for you, sir. So I don't see where, oh, there he is, Ken Jones. He is unmuted. And it could be a setting in your computer where you're not using the proper microphone on your system. That's happened to me before. And Mr. Jones, do be aware that we are in receipt of your written testimony.
And if you can't get audio today, am I assuming correctly that he could testify on the 23rd?
Yes. So, Mr. Jones, we are going to have a second public hearing on March 23rd, also at 10 a.m. And we are going to keep public testimony open. So if you'd like to provide additional written testimony or come back on the 23rd, you can provide oral testimony at that point again also.
Or come in person?
Or you can come in person. Yes, that may be a better option. Thank you for trying, sir. Appreciate it very much. Do we have anyone else online or on the phone that would like to provide public testimony? Okay, so at this point, should we close public testimony for today, or shall we just leave it open? Okay. Next steps, what are our next steps here?
Commissioner, is the board collectively interested in exploration of the, something, escape clause, if you will, for the folks like Ms. K, that there may be? Are you interested in at least
Yes.
seeing if there's some way that could be incorporated into the ordinance?
We'd like to know the parameters of this federal tax status issue. At first, I've heard of it.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
I don't think doesn't sound like it's directly related to this, but, you know, if there's some option for, taking into account folks who don't rent that often, some sort of dialing down or exemption, you are interested in at least seeing if that's possible or.
Yeah, I would be interested in seeing if that's possible. I would be curious to know what tool would be available to us to monitor and track that, just because that's, when we talked about nights previously, that was one of the big concerns, was that's
Okay.
just not in our current thing. But it may be a document they could provide to us related to federal tax status or something, I don't know. So I absolutely would love to look at it.
All right.
Please be aware also, we've had the conversation with Sarah. I think Sarah brought this up. There is a possibility that we could adjust the number of of people that could rent a vacation rental. But that could be a slippery slope, and we need to understand, anybody that would want to do that, if you are currently allowed 8 residents in your vacation rental, and you decide to move it to 4 or 5, something like that, in order to reduce the rate of the fee, please be aware that that will affect the number of people that you can rent to in the future. So everyone just needs to be aware of that moving forward. Okay, do we have any further? Yes, Rachel.
Yeah, I would recommend, Mr. Chair, closing this hearing. There are 2 public hearings,
Yes.
and it's not, we don't typically leave hearings open during the ordinance revision process, so I would close the hearing today.
Okay, perfect. Any other comment anyone would like to make? Last call for anyone. Oops, here we go. We have another hand up. Ms. Kay. So you've already had an opportunity to testify, so we're going to ask you to be as quick as possible. You are muted, ma'am.
I just wanted to make sure that my written testimony, which included the citation to federal tax law, was included in the record. I had sent it to community development. I'm sure it was an oversight. But I don't want the record to close without it being in the record.
And we are not closing the record at all, and I believe all 3 commissioners are in receipt of your email. So it will be a part of the record, and the record is not closed. We will not be closing the record.
And Director
Okay, thank you.
Director Absher is indicating that your original testimony is included in the record, and so we'll have a chance to review that, so thank you. That's in addition to.
Okay, thank you so much.
today.
Perfect. So again, we're continuing, we're going to close this, but we will have a second public hearing on March 23rd, 10 a.m., same time. And again, the public record will remain open, so you can provide additional public comment or emails at that time. So, seeing no further business before us, we're going to close this public hearing at 10:34 a.m. And so now we're back into our business meeting. One item that I need to continue, so we need to ask, are there any board concerns? Non-agenda items?
No.
Neither? Board announcements. Let me go through board announcements, other meetings and announcements. The commissioners will hold a board briefing on Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022 at 2 p.m. to discuss weekly commissioner updates. The meeting will be held at the courthouse in the Nestucca Room, 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon. The teleconference number is 971-254-3149. Conference ID 736-023-979#. Also, a leadership team meeting of the County Board of Commissioners with the Tillamook County elected officials and department heads will be held on Monday, March 7, 2022 at 9 a.m. Teleconference number is 971-254-3149. Conference ID again, 736-023-979#. So with that, time being 10:35 a.m., we will adjourn this Board of Commissioners meeting. Thank you everyone for being here.